Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where today we're going to be talking about a man and his stick who are going to become the latest exhibit in an alien zoo, which means we can only be talking about one game, Bubba N Stix. Bubba N Stix was developed by Core Design and released for the Amiga and MegaDrive in 1994, but the version we'll be mostly checking out today is the CD32 edition that was released just a few short months after the others. It's a very basic dual case release, with the manual also doubling as the cover, which is also massively cut down versus the other releases, as it no longer needs the comic that formed most of the other manual, as surprise surprise there's an animated intro, which shows how poor Bubba was just out on his deliveries when Waldo the alien decides that he would be a great subject for an alien zoo. Fortunately for us, he wasn't the smartest or best driver around, as his cargo gets loose, which includes our hero Bubba and his best new friend, Stix. The game starts you in this forest, which is a nice simple level that helps teach you the controls, as this isn't your basic platformer. It's a puzzle adventure game, and continues to show that Core wasn't all that interested in doing the typical Euro platformer. Though the goal is still quite simple, you gotta get to the exit, the path can be quite complex, and will require more than a little thinking and planning. A good example of the puzzling is right at the start, where there's this tree that blocks you from going left. If you face him, he'll close his eyes, and you can't actually hurt him, like some sort of woody boo. And if you walk away from him, he'll follow you, also making it pretty difficult to get behind him. So if we want to get those sweet pickups behind him, we need to be sneaky, as just using sticks on him won't help. Instead, we have to throw him behind him, then turn away. So the faithful stick will then try and return, and will bounce off the back of the tree, turning him into a little sapling. Stix is your main way of solving the puzzles of this game, as he is a multi-talented bit of sentient wood. And as seen, he can be used as a weapon by being thrown, or used as a club. He can be poked into various holes, which can trigger something, or he can just stick there and become a ledge. And as you go through the game, you'll find many uses for the little guy. One of the things you can't fail to notice is how well drawn and animated the characters are. And it's not just limited to Bubba, as we also have the big bad Waldo, as well as all the other various creatures that live in this world. It is an absolutely lovely looking game. And amazingly, some of the reviewers were surprised to find there was 2 artists on this game, and they were quite surprised at how well all the art stuck together. It's a real indication of where the industry was, at least in the UK at the time. And after a few additional run-ins with Waldo, who fails at every single turn in increasingly funnier ways, we make it to the second level, which is where the game really opens up. Gone is that linear left to right level design, instead we now have this multi-tiered map to explore and puzzle out. The goal here is just to open up these doors, and you'll have to use all your platforming and puzzling know-how to solve that, as this level is totally open and you can solve each of the doors in whichever order you like. There aren't a huge number of levels in the game, there's actually just 5, so after the first one they do tend to become more intricate and longer to complete, so you can expect to spend a decent amount of time here trying to work out what it is you need to do. The main trick to this level is using the transporter to move yourself and other objects between the various floors. And I have to say, even to this day I still love that face that Bubba pulls when you teleport him. This level is just full of quirky objects and creatures that you have to use and slightly abuse in places to allow you to get further. When you first get to this level, you might be tricked into thinking it's actually linear like the last, but once you get past that first few obstacles, it really does open up. The rest of the levels mix up this linear and open level design even more, with none of them being quite as straightforward as the first, but also not being quite as open as the second. But there's no end of interesting environments, puzzles, and funny situations as you go along. Amazingly, this was another UK game that had a snack-based sponsorship, though interestingly this was only in the US release for the Genesis, where it got sponsored by Bubblicious Bubblegum. I guess the little coloured items that you pick up must have seemed like a good fit for them. This was mostly seen in the box art, promotion, and some of the bonus levels, where some of the items were actually replaced with packs of gum. Which seems like a good time to talk about the bonus levels themselves, as these are, well, they're a little bit weird. The amount of time you get in each of these levels is based on how many of the items you collected in the regular level. And with that time you have to navigate a bit of a maze to not only collect more items, which will help you rack up that score, but also will give you a chance to find some extra lives, and if you're really lucky, you might be able to find some continues. Now it might not be completely clear what all these items are for, or even what you need to do to get into the bonus level. Which it turns out you need to collect that 3-eyed unicycle thing. Even if you checked the manual you wouldn't have known, as it's surprisingly basic. This is a truly learn as you go type of game. And as we've touched on the MegaDrive version, it's worth noting that it's not completely the same as the Amiga release, as the second level got massively simplified, with there being much less need to move items between various levels using the teleporter. On top of that, it also got some more detailed backgrounds, and it had its own completely unique soundtrack. This was another Amiga game that had some great music, but if you wanted to hear it you had to do so at the expense of the sound effects. Yes, this is another game that made you choose between sound effects and music. Which is a shame because the sound effects actually are quite good, so it is actually quite a hard choice. Now long-time viewers won't be surprised to find that the CD32 version had its own CD soundtrack, which again was completely unique, but it did allow to have the better sound effects and music playing at the same time. Though there was one place you could hear the music, and that was on the map screen, which shows up between each of the levels, which has some lovely animated touches as you finish each level as it slowly pans across. As we reach the third level, things are starting to heat up, as there's lava, lots and lots of lava, and it opens up with this more traditional bit of platforming again, with you having to get up and around all the various lava flows, though Stix still gets a bit of a workout as he has to help you get rocks into the right place, as well as being used to help us balance and not fall down. Along the way we also find these two, who show up in each level. Now I'm not sure if they're meant to be family, friends, or a couple, but Green isn't very nice, as he's always finding new and amusing ways to mess around with Blue. Even on the second level where he looks sad that he can't be with Blue, it turns pretty nasty when they're united. Though we shouldn't complain too much, as on a few occasions it does actually help us out. After that initial section, the level opens up a little bit more, but it's still having to travel around through various pipes and elevators to try and open the path to the exit. By the fourth level, we're finding out that we're not going to be able to escape an underwater level, so get ready to swim about as Stix acting as a snorkel. It seems sucking wood doesn't give you all that much air, but it does seem to help out more than you'd expect. What you might not expect is that Bubba doesn't seem to be able to swim without having Stix to hand, so if you fall into the water without him, you better call him quick. Being a 90s platformer, we still had lives and health. You get 6 hit points in both versions of the game, though the bar does look quite cool in the MegaDrive version, with it being a version of Stix. Thankfully you can restock your health by finding these little jellies that look like nurses. On top of that, there's also extra lives that look like little jelly versions of Bubba with his hair. and even though it's not mentioned anywhere in the manual or really even hinted at in the Amiga version, there is actually a continue system. And you'll get more continues if you find the juggling jelly in the bonus levels. Now typically these are locked away in more difficult to find sections, but if you have enough time and you work out the sequence you can grab them. Now even at this point it won't indicate that you have a continue. It's not until you lose all your lives and the screen shows up that you'll actually get an inkling that this thing actually exists. Overall, this level is far more straightforward than the last. It's mostly a case of raising and then lowering the water to try and get around the various parts of the level, as well as finding the objects that will float and give you something to stand on. Now as we come onto the last level, it seems they originally had plans to have far more content, as various magazine previews for the game mentions a different number of levels, some ranging all the way up to 11, though typically they said it would have between 6 and 7 levels. And in those magazines we actually get a glimpse of what they might have been like, as there's 2 screenshots that look like the forest but have these underwater bits, which didn't show up in the final game. But as those never made it, we're on to the final level, which is the spaceport, where we have to deal with the normal joys of airports with backpackers, travelators, baggage robots that try to help you out, and robo-sentries that try to shoot you. It makes you feel strangely nostalgic for the time you could travel. It continues the theme of the last level, where it's a mostly linear trek to the end. But you'll still have to deal with various puzzles to get there. The level is actually quite big, so thankfully there are these little things that show up, which act as checkpoints, which is where you'll restart if you die. This is also the only level that actually ends in a boss fight, which I swear tries to make up for the lack of them by having one that takes a huge number of hits to take down, which is a bit of a shame as the combat wasn't one of the areas where this game excelled at. Some baddies you can only hit by swinging sticks like a club, others have to be hit when it's being thrown, and others that are just an absolute pain to take down no matter what route. Thankfully it was never really the focus of the game until this end bit. Bubba N Stix was another quite interesting and well animated platformer by Core, and like most of the others it also tended to go against the typical tropes of the Euro platformer. It's just a shame they didn't also break from the typical CD32 release, as this is just mostly the great Amiga 500 version, but there was scope for using the updated backgrounds from the MegaDrive version, or even using more of the controller, as it has one button to use sticks and the other to jump, which I will admit is a step up from some ports. But amazingly, even the Amiga 500 version had the option of using 2-button joysticks, though when you enabled it, it had one button to use sticks and the other to throw. They could have used the control method from the MegaDrive, with throw, use and jump all being on separate buttons. It also would have been nice if they put a bit more detail into the manual. Having to learn absolutely everything via trial by error, including the fact there's continues, isn't great. But it's still a great game. And being a Core game as well, it's not the easiest to get your hands on. It's not on any of the digital stores, and getting a second-hand copy can be quite pricey. And if you do pick it up, you'll find a fun, well, slightly difficult in places game. And before I go, I'd love to hear how many of you lot also got stuck on that second level. It can't have just been me. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was quite the double act, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below. You know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.